We need a Warthog pilot over Kabul Valley. Now. The operations commander's voice crackled through the radio, sharp with urgency. In the pre-dawn darkness of Bagram Airfield, engines roared to life across the tarmac, drowning out the desperate calls from the forward operating base under siege. 3 miles of hostile territory separated a trapped platoon from survival, and the window for close air support was closing fast. Captain Jade Farrell stepped out of the operations building, flight suit already soaked with sweat despite the cool desert air. The boots that hit the concrete were smaller than most on this base, but they moved with purpose. Behind her, a voice called out rough, dismissive. "Sir, that's the mechanic. Where's our CAS pilot?" The colonel turned, confusion flickering across his weathered face. "Captain Farrell is your pilot." "Her?" The forward air controller's doubt hung in the static. "Sir, with all due respect, we need someone with combat experience. Lives are on the line." Jade didn't break stride toward the waiting A-10 Thunderbolt, the second squatting on the flight line like an armored predator. She'd heard it before, would hear it again. The doubt never got easier, but arguing wasted time men on the ground didn't have. The Warthog's twin turbofans spooled up as she climbed into the cockpit, their distinctive whine cutting through the night. Her hands moved through pre-flight checks with practiced efficiency, each switch and gauge reading a familiar conversation between pilot and machine. The titanium bathtub surrounding her seat felt like an old friend. 700 rounds of 30 mm ammunition sat loaded in the GAU-8 Avenger cannon beneath her feet, waiting. "Command, Hog 6-1 ready for tasking." Her voice stayed level, professional. No edge, no emotion, just capability. Hawk 6-1, proceed to checkpoint Delta. Friendlies pinned by mortar fire from ridge position. Danger close 50 meters. Jade pushed the throttles forward. The A-10 rolled, then lifted, clawing into the dark Afghan sky. Below, the lights of Bagram fell away into blackness. Ahead, somewhere in that darkness, men were dying. The memory hit her as she climbed another ops room, 2 years earlier, stateside. Flight instructor credentials in her hand. Combat deployment request denied. Again. "Farrell, you're an excellent instructor pilot," the squadron commander had said, not meeting her eyes. "We need you training the next generation. Combat slots are limited, and frankly, the ground units get uncomfortable with female pilots in CAS roles. It's about team cohesion." She'd stood at attention, jaw tight. "Sir, I've logged more hours in the A-10 than half the pilots you just deployed. My gunnery scores are exceptional, I know." He'd sighed. "Look, this isn't about your capability. It's about politics, optics, and keeping the infantry comfortable. You understand?" She didn't. But she'd saluted and walked out. 6 months later, she'd resubmitted, denied, then again, and again. Each rejection felt like another door slammed shut, another voice saying she wasn't trusted to do the job she'd trained her entire career for. So she'd transferred, pulled strings, and leveraged every regulation she could find until someone finally reluctantly said yes. Now, 3 weeks into her combat deployment, the doubt followed her like a shadow. The radio crackled. "Hog 6-1. Target area 2 mics out. Be advised, friendlies are in the open. No cover. Taking casualties, we need those mortars silenced, but the ridge is crawling with hostiles. Copy. I'll make it work." The valley opened below her, a black scar between mountains barely visible in the starlight. Jade activated her night vision systems, and the landscape bloomed into ghostly green. Their thermal signatures clustered near a dried riverbed. Friendlies. And on the ridge above them, the orange bloom of mortar tubes firing. She banked hard, studying the geometry. The ridge angled steeply, with the enemy position dug into the slope. Friendly forces directly below, exposed. A standard gun run would put her directly between them, with rounds that missed potentially hitting the trapped platoon. "Hog 6-1, rifle." The call came from another aircraft, an F-16, making a missile run on a target 10 clicks north. She watched the contrail arc across the stars, distant thunder rolling seconds later. Jade couldn't use missiles. Not with friendlies this close. This required precision. The gun. She rolled inverted, pulling the A-10's nose down into a dive that would have made her instructors wince. The target painting laser locked onto the ridge, tracking the heat signatures moving between the rocks. Mortar teams. 12, maybe 15 hostiles. At 4,000 feet, she rolled upright and pulled hard, the G-forces crushing her into the seat. The targeting pipper settled on the ridge. 3 seconds. 2. The angle was impossible, too steep, too fast, too close to friendlies. She fired. The Gau-8 cannon erupted with its signature roar, a sound like thunder being torn apart. Depleted uranium rounds screamed downrange at 900 feet per second, each one capable of punching through tank armor. In the green glow of her night vision, she watched the tracers walk up the ridge in a perfect line, stitching destruction through the enemy position. Rock and earth exploded. Bodies disappeared into dust. The mortar fire ceased. Jade pulled up hard, the aircraft groaning as she climbed away from the valley floor. Her arms ached. Sweat stung her eyes. The radio erupted. "Holy shit, Hawk 6-1, direct hit!" Mortars neutralized. "How the hell did you?" She didn't answer. 3 more thermal signatures bloomed on her display, technical vehicles moving toward the pin platoon's position, heavy weapons mounted. "Hawk 6-1, be advised, 3 technicals approaching from the northwest. Friendlies still exposed." "I see them, rolling in." This time she came from the east, keeping the mountains between her and the enemy until the last moment. The A-10's engines, mounted high on the fuselage, gave her a low infrared signature. She was practically invisible until she wanted to be seen. At 2,000 feet, she dropped flares and pulled up, drawing the technicals' attention. Tracers arced up toward her, heavy machine gun fire lighting the darkness. She felt the familiar rush, the razor's edge between control and chaos. Then she rolled hard and dropped below the ridgeline, vanishing from their sight. The technicals kept firing at empty air where she'd been. Amateur mistake. She came around the mountain's shoulder low and fast, the A-10's titanium belly almost scraping the rocks. The technicals sat exposed on the valley floor, still firing at ghosts. Her targeting system locked. The cannon spoke again. The first vehicle exploded, ammunition cooking off in a chain reaction. The second tried to run, but 30 rounds caught it broadside, turning metal and men into shredded wreckage. The third vehicle's driver threw open his door and ran. She let him go. "Hawk 6-1, all threats neutralized. Friendlies are..." "Jesus, Captain, that was the finest flying I've ever seen." Jade checked her fuel. Enough for 1 more orbit. She circled the valley, watching for movement, for any sign the enemy might regroup. Below, the platoon's thermal signatures moved toward a defensible position. They'd make it. "Hog 6-1, command." "Return to base." She pointed the A-10's nose toward Bagram, letting the adrenaline slowly drain from her system. Her hand shook slightly on the stick they always did after combat. She'd learned to hide it. The landing was smooth, wheels touching concrete just as dawn broke over the mountains. Jade taxied to the maintenance area, shut down the engines, and climbed down from the cockpit. The ground crew stood back, eyes wide, staring at her aircraft. That's when she saw it. The A-10's left engine nacelle was shredded. Hydraulic fluid leaked from torn lines. The entire left side of the fuselage showed fresh damage, jagged holes from heavy machine gun fire that she hadn't felt, hadn't known was there until this moment. "Ma'am," the crew chief approached, face pale. "When did this happen?" Jade walked around the aircraft, inspecting the damage with detached professionalism. 14 holes. 15. The rounds had missed the fuel tanks by inches, missed the flight control systems by less. One had punched through the titanium bathtub, protecting the cockpit, passing between her seat and the instrument panel. During the second engagement, she said quietly, "I didn't feel it." "You didn't feel..." The crew chief stopped, shook his head. "Ma'am, half these systems should have failed. You flew this bird back on backups and prayer." She touched one of the holes, felt the torn metal. "She brought me home. That's what Warthogs do." The operations building was buzzing when she walked in for debrief. Officers crowded around a radio, listening to the recorded communications from the mission. Someone had already pulled the gun camera footage. Colonel Murdoch looked up as she entered. His expression was unreadable. "Captain Farrell, my office." "Now." She followed him into the small room, stood at attention while he closed the door. Waited for it, the critique, the questions about why she'd taken such risks, pushed such angles. Instead, he turned on the monitor mounted to the wall. The gun camera footage played back in grainy black and white. She watched herself make the first dive, the impossible angle, the precision required to put rounds on target without hitting friendlies. Watched the second engagement, the tactical feint and repositioning that had drawn fire away from the platoon. "That's not how they teach it at the schoolhouse," Murdoch said. "No, sir. The manual says maintain safe standoff distance. Use standard approach angles. Don't get fancy." "Yes, sir." He paused the video, freezing on a frame showing her A-10 inverted, diving toward the ridge. "The platoon commander on the ground just filed his report. Want to know what it says?" Jade stayed silent. "It says a pilot named Farrell saved 23 lives tonight with flying, he describes. As impossibly precise, and unlike anything I've witnessed in 12 years of combat." Murdoch turned to face her. "It also says the initial FAC expressed doubt about your capability before you launched." "Sir." "How many times have you heard that, Captain, that you're not ready, not experienced enough, not what they expected?" The question hung between them. Jade met his eyes. "Every deployment brief since I got here, sir. Most mission taskings. Sometimes from ground units who don't want me providing their CAS. And yet you still fly. It's the job, sir." Murdoch nodded slowly. 14 holes in your aircraft. Hydraulic failure. You brought that Warthog home and landed it like it was a training sortie. The crew chief says most pilots would have ejected. The ejection seemed inefficient, sir. I could still fly. Something that might have been a smile crossed the colonel's face. Inefficient. He pulled a folder from his desk, opened it. "Captain Farrell, I've been reviewing your record. 4 years requesting combat deployment. Denied. Every time. Exceptional gunnery scores. Outstanding evaluations. And yet somehow, you kept getting assigned to training duties stateside. Someone has to train the next generation, sir. That's what they told you, isn't it?" He closed the folder. "Want to know what I think?" "Yes, sir. I think the Air Force took one look at you and decided combat was too much risk. Not because of your capability, because of their comfort. Easier to keep you where they could point and say, see. We have women in tactical aviation. Easier than dealing with the old guard who don't think you belong in a cockpit over hostile territory." Jade's jaw tightened. "With respect, sir, I'm here now. That's what matters." "You're right. You are here. And in 3 weeks, you've run more successful CAS missions than pilots with 3 times your combat hours." He opened the door. "Come with me." She followed him back into the operations center. The room fell silent as they entered. Murdoch gestured to the monitor showing the gun camera footage, now playing on the main screen. "Gather round," he announced. "Every pilot in this building, I want you to watch this." They crowded in captains, majors, lieutenant colonels. Some she recognized. Others were new faces, fresh rotations from other squadrons. The footage played. The first engagement, the vertical dive, the precision that defied standard doctrine. Then the second, the tactical feint, the low-altitude dash that had exposed her to enemy fire. When it finished, Murdoch turned to the assembled pilots. "Captain Farrell flew this mission 3 hours ago. She neutralized enemy positions 50 meters from friendlies, destroyed 3 technical vehicles, and saved 23 American lives. Then she brought a battle-damaged aircraft home with half her systems failing." He paused. "Some of you expressed concerns when she arrived about having a female pilot in CAS roles, about whether she could handle the pressure, the violence, the split-second decisions." The room stayed silent. Jade felt every eye on her. "I want those concerns voiced now," Murdoch continued. "Anyone who still doubts Captain Farrell's capability, speak up." No one moved. No one spoke. Good. Because from this point forward, any mission requiring close air support in restricted terrain goes to Hog 6-1. First, Captain Farrell is now our primary CAS pilot for danger-close operations. He looked directly at Jade. You've earned it. She nodded, throat tight. Thank you, sir. But Murdoch wasn't finished. I'm also recommending you for the Distinguished Flying Cross, and I'm sending a formal complaint to CENTCOM about the assignment practices that kept you stateside for 4 years. What happened to you was wrong. I can't fix the past, but I can make sure it doesn't happen to the next pilot. The weight of his words settled over her. 4 years of rejection. 4 years of being told she wasn't ready, wasn't trusted, wasn't what they needed. And now dismissed, Murdoch said. Except you, Captain. One more thing. The room cleared. When they were alone, he handed her a satellite phone. The platoon commander wants to speak with you. Personally. She took the phone, uncertain. Sir? Just take the call, Farrell. The voice on the other end was rough, strained with exhaustion. This is Lieutenant Wesley Quinn. I'm the platoon leader you pulled out of the valley tonight. Yes, sir. I need to tell you something. When they said our CAs was a female pilot, He paused. I was pissed. Thought command was sending us second string because we're just a National Guard unit. Figured we'd get some timid passes and then you'd bug out. Jade closed her eyes. Heard it before. But you didn't bug out. You came in like the hand of God and put steel exactly where we needed it. I watched you. Dove through ground fire to save my men. Watched you dance that Warthog through terrain that should have been impossible. His voice cracked. My guys are alive because of you. My best friend is alive because of you. And I was wrong to doubt. I'm sorry. You don't need to apologize, sir. Yeah, I do. Because I'm not the only one who thought that way. And I won't be the last. But I'm going to make damn sure every soldier I meet knows what you did tonight. I'm going to tell them that the best CAS pilot I ever worked with was a woman who flew when she shouldn't have survived, and landed when she should have ejected, because getting home meant she could fly again tomorrow. He paused. Thank you, Captain Farrell, from all of us. The line went dead. Jade stood holding the phone, feeling something shift inside her chest, some tight knot she'd carried for years finally loosening. Murdoch was watching her. You all right? Yes, sir. Good. Get some rest. You're flying again in 6 hours. She started toward the door, then stopped. Sir, why did you go to bat for me? Most commanders would have just accepted my assignment status. He leaned back in his chair, considering the question. My daughter wants to be a fighter pilot. She's got the scores, the drive, everything she needs. But I see how the system works, how it finds ways to hold people back who don't fit the expected image. I can't fix the whole Air Force. He met her eyes. But I can make sure it's different in my squadron. Here, you fly based on skill. Nothing else. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. Just keep bringing my pilots home. Over the next 3 months, Jade flew 47 combat missions. Her call sign became legendary among ground units. Hog 6-1 was the name infantry requested specifically when things went bad. She developed a reputation for taking missions other pilots wouldn't touch. Danger close support, restrictive terrain, troops in contact with overwhelming enemy forces. The battle damage reports told their own story. Jade's A-10 returned to base 22 times with combat damage ranging from small arms holes to catastrophic hydraulic failures. Twice, maintenance declared the aircraft unflyable, and twice she proved them wrong by landing it safely. The crew chief started calling her Warthog. Iron Lady. Not for the pilot, but for the aircraft that refused to quit. Other pilots watched her fly, studied her tactics, adapted her techniques. The vertical dive she'd pioneered on that first mission became doctrine for steep terrain CAS. Her low-altitude approach method saved countless lives in situations where standard procedures would have failed. But it was the moment in the operations brief that changed everything. Major Sterling stood at the front of the room, 3 weeks before the squadron's rotation home. Today's scenario: friendlies pinned in urban terrain, enemy forces in surrounding buildings, restrictive ROE, high civilian presence. Who's taking the mission? Every pilot in the room turned to look at Jade. Sterling nodded. Hog 6-1. That's why I asked. He gestured to the younger pilots, the new arrivals still learning the theater. Captain Farrell has run more successful urban CAS missions than anyone in theater. If you're going to learn how to do this right, watch her. Ask her. She's writing the playbook the rest of us follow. After the brief, a young lieutenant approached her fresh-faced, nervous, clearly struggling with something. Ma'am, can I ask you something? Sure. How do you deal with it, the doubt I mean? The way people look at you and assume you can't hack it before you even prove yourself? She swallowed hard. I'm the only woman in my training class. My instructors keep suggesting I'd be better in transport aircraft. I'm starting to think maybe they're right. Jade studied the young pilot's face, seeing echoes of her own journey. Are they right? No. I mean, my scores, then they're wrong, and they'll keep being wrong until you prove otherwise. Jade leaned against the briefing table. Here's what I learned. Doubt is always going to be there. From others, sometimes from yourself. The question isn't whether you'll face it. The question is what you do when you do. What did you do? I flew. When they said I couldn't, I did anyway. When they denied my combat deployment, I reapplied until someone said yes. When they questioned my capability, I let my results speak. She met the lieutenant's eyes. The doubt doesn't go away just because you prove yourself once. You have to keep proving it. But eventually, you build a record they can't ignore. And you change what's possible for the pilots who come after you. The lieutenant nodded slowly. Thank you, ma'am. Thank me by being so good they can't deny you. Then help the next one. 2 weeks before rotation home, Jade was called to a ceremony at Bagram's main hangar. She walked in to find the entire squadron assembled, along with the platoon she'd saved on that first mission. Lieutenant Quinn standing at attention with his men. Colonel Murdoch stood at a podium, his voice carrying across the hangar. We're here to recognize extraordinary courage and skill under fire. Captain Jade Farrell, front and center. She marched forward, boots echoing on the concrete. Murdoch read from a citation. For heroism and extraordinary achievement while participating in aerial flight as an A-10 pilot on 12 October, Captain Farrell displayed exceptional courage and airmanship while providing close air support to friendly forces under heavy enemy fire. Despite battle damage to her aircraft and extreme danger, she conducted multiple precision attacks that directly saved 23 American lives. Her actions reflect great credit upon herself and the United States Air Force. He pinned the Distinguished Flying Cross to her uniform. The squadron erupted in applause, but then Quinn stepped forward. Sir, if I may? Murdoch nodded. Quinn turned to face the assembled squadron. I want to add something to the official record. When Captain Farrell flew that mission, I doubted her. I'm ashamed to admit it, but it's true. I heard a woman's voice on the radio and assumed we were getting second-rate support. He looked at Jade. I was wrong. Dead wrong. Captain Farrell flew with courage that defied description and precision I still can't believe was possible. She saved my life and the lives of my men through sheer skill and refusal to accept the impossible. He came to attention and saluted. Behind him, the entire platoon followed suit, a gesture normally reserved for senior officers and fallen heroes. Jade returned the salute, feeling the moment crystallize into something larger than personal vindication. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every pilot who'd been doubted, every warrior judged before they'd had a chance to prove themselves. The next day, Murdoch called her into his office one final time. I heard back from CENTCOM. They're launching a formal review of combat pilot assignment practices. Your case specifically. They want to ensure capability, not demographics or comfort, determines who gets deployed. He handed her a folder. They're also asking for your input on new training protocols. Seems your tactics are being incorporated into the CAS syllabus service-wide. Jade opened the folder, scanned the documents. Her dive profiles, her urban approach techniques, her methods for operating in restricted terrain. All of it, captured and codified for the next generation. There's one more thing, Murdoch said. Fighter Weapons School wants you as an instructor. They're creating a new program focused on extreme close air support. They asked for you by name. Fighter Weapons School. The elite. The instructors who taught instructors, who shaped doctrine for the entire Air Force. When would I start? 6 months, after you take leave and decompress, he smiled. Captain Farrell, you came to this deployment with something to prove. You proved it, then proved it again, then kept proving it until no one could deny it. Now you get to make sure the Air Force never makes the same mistake. I get to train the next generation of pilots, all of them to fly like you do. On skill, on merit, nothing else. She thought about the young lieutenant who'd asked for advice, about the pilots who'd come after her, who wouldn't face the same walls she had, about the infantry platoon leader who'd apologized for doubting. I accept, sir. The morning she left Bagram, the entire squadron turned out. But more than that, ground unit she'd supported lined the flight line. Infantry, forward air controllers, medics who'd treated the wounded she'd helped save. They stood at attention as she walked to the waiting transport aircraft. Lieutenant Quinn stepped forward, holding something in his hands. "Ma'am, my platoon wanted you to have this." It was a patch custom made showing an A-10 with a lightning bolt and the words Iron Lady. Below it, a simple inscription. Hog 6-1. When it's impossible, call her. "They're making these for every unit in Regional Command East," Quinn said, "so they know who to ask for when they need the best." Jade took the patch, turned it over in her hands. Felt the weight of what it represented, not just personal achievement, but institutional change. "Thank you." "No, ma'am. Thank you. For proving what matters is what you can do, not what you look like. For showing my men that courage doesn't have a gender. For saving our lives." He saluted again. "We won't forget." She climbed aboard the transport. As it lifted off, banking over the airfield, she saw her A-10 sitting on the maintenance ramp's guard, patched, still ready to fly. The crew chief had painted a small inscription below the cockpit, 23 tally marks, one for each life saved on that first mission. 6 months later, Jade stood in front of her first class at fighter weapons school. 30 pilots, mixed genders, all hungry to learn. She clicked to the first slide. Gun camera footage from Kabul Valley. "What you're about to see breaks every rule in the standard CA's manual," she began. "The dive is too steep, the altitude too low, the proximity to friendlies too close. By the book, it's impossible." She let the footage play. Watched the students' faces shift from skepticism to shock to awe. "But here's what matters. It worked. 23 people went home because someone was willing to push past impossible." She paused. "This course is going to teach you how to do the same, not by ignoring safety, but by expanding your understanding of what's possible when skill meets necessity. We're going to train until these impossible maneuvers become instinctive, until you can fly them in your sleep, until you're so good that no one, not the enemy, not your doubters, not even yourself, can stop you from bringing your people home." A young pilot raised his hand. "Ma'am, they say you took battle damage on that mission but still landed. How do you train for that?" "You don't train for damage. You train to be so fundamentally competent that when something fails, your skills don't. You train until the aircraft is an extension of yourself, until you trust it, and it trusts you, and together you can handle whatever comes." She smiled. "Also, it helps to fly an A-10. They're built tough." The class laughed, tension breaking. Over the next 3 years, Jade trained 247 pilots in advanced CAS techniques. Her graduates deployed worldwide, bringing her tactics to every combat theater. The Farrell dive became standard doctrine. Infantry units who'd never heard of her knew her techniques by reputation, the pilot who did the impossible, who saved lives when no one else could. But more than tactics, she taught philosophy. Capability over credentials, courage over comfort, results over recognition. And when those students asked how to handle doubt from others, from themselves, she told them the same thing she'd lived. Prove them wrong, then help the next one. The Air Force changed too. Slowly. Combat pilot assignments shifted to merit-based evaluations. Training opportunities opened. The old barriers didn't disappear entirely, they never do, but they cracked, weakened. Change from walls into hurdles that could be cleared. 5 years after that first mission over Kabul Valley, Lieutenant Quinn, now Captain Quinn, visited fighter weapons school during a training exchange. He found Jade in her office, reviewing gun camera footage with a student. "Ma'am, got a minute?" She dismissed the student, gestured for Quinn to sit. "Captain, good to see you. How's the leg?" He touched his thigh, unconsciously shrapnel from that night in the valley, a wound that would have been fatal if she hadn't silenced those mortars. "Good as new. Actually, better. Gave me a story to tell." He pulled out his phone, showed her a photo. "My daughter, born last year. Named her Jade. She stared at the photo of a baby girl, barely 6 months old, wrapped in a blanket. I tell her every night about the pilot who saved her daddy's life, Quinn said. About the woman who flew through hell to bring me home. Figured the least I could do was make sure she grows up knowing what real courage looks like. Jade felt her throat tighten. She's beautiful. She is. And when she's old enough to understand, I'm going to tell her that she can be anything she wants. Pilot, soldier. President doesn't matter. Because I saw firsthand that capability isn't determined by anything except skill and heart. He stood. You changed more than combat doctrine, ma'am. You changed minds. Changed what people believe is possible. That little girl is going to grow up in a better Air Force because you refuse to quit. After he left, Jade sat in her office looking at the patch Quinn had given her 5 years earlier, now framed on her wall. Iron Lady. When it's impossible, call her. Below it, a letter from the Air Force Chief of Staff thanking her for her contributions to modernizing CAS doctrine. Next to that, photos from 23 families the men she'd saved, now home, now living the lives they'd almost lost. This was vindication. Not the medal, not the recognition, though those mattered. The real vindication was the young pilots who walked through her door every day believing they belonged in a cockpit because she'd proven it was possible. The ground units who trusted CAS pilots regardless of gender because they'd seen the results. The slow institutional change that meant the next Jade Farrell wouldn't wait 4 years to prove herself. She turned back to her computer, pulled up the training schedule. Tomorrow, she'd teach her advanced class the high-angle urban CAS approach. The day after, extreme low-altitude tactics. Every day, another skill transferred. Another pilot made better. Another crack in the old barriers. Outside her window, an A-10 thundered down the runway, climbing into the desert sky. The sound was familiar, comforting the sound of warriors going to work, of protection delivered on titanium wings. Jade smiled. The mission continued, and she was exactly where she belonged. If you have enjoyed the story, tell YouTube to send you more stories like this by subscribing to this channel, liking the video, and leaving a comment.